Hi, everyone. Giving it a few minutes for everyone to join. I see attendees are joining the webinar. We have people from all over the world today coming in. Actually, quite a number of attendees I see coming in. Okay, Eric, let's kick it off.
Hello, guys. How's everybody doing? Okay, so I'm Eric Cheng. I'm the guy who emailed you guys and on our initiative. This is something we've been doing, and we finally want to scale it up. And the first thing we think about is sharing it with our INSEAD alums, because we know a lot of INSEAD people, and I'm from INSEAD. So I am leading the private equity arm of the family office. And today we have our director, Martin, on the call to share with you guys, how we do this, and also a little bit of reality stuff. So stuff that we've done before, and we'll have the floor for some questions at the end. I know everybody's dying for questions, so yeah, let's take off. Martin, floor is yours.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Eric. Can you see me, by the way? Is it working fine? And hear me? Eric?
Yeah, I hear you. Okay.
Yeah, and you okay? Fantastic. Okay, thanks, guys. So here today to talk about the owner-operator initiative. We'll try to keep the whole discussion under 1 hour. There is room for questions. Feel free to ask your questions during the webinar. There's a Q&A function. We'll try to answer them as much as we can today. If not possible, we will just get into it after this webinar, maybe drop you an email. There's other means of communication. But I just want to give you a brief overview of what we're trying to do, and most importantly, how all of this can sort of add value for you, right? Because this is really what we're trying to get at. So let's get started.
Okay.
Maybe just on the agenda for today, I'll do a quick intro of our family office. We'll talk about our thesis. We'll talk about the opportunity, and this is the opportunity for the people watching the webinar. So it's really meant for you. We'll talk a bit about how we structure the process. We might go into a brief case study to give a bit of color to all of this. Maybe a little bit about the deal flow, and like I said, we end with an FAQ and a Q&A, just to let's see which direction that would go into. But let's start with the introduction first. Okay, so thanks, Eric. Next slide. We are basically a family office based out of Singapore, which is set up by me and also my wife. My wife's also an INSEAD alumni. Basically, this is a holding company where we sort of, do various activities. We've been quite active in venture capital space over the years, mainly here in Singapore and a bit in Southeast Asia. Still are till date, actively investing in startup companies. And then we have a private equity angle, which we're going to talk about more today. And we do some real estate and some other activities. But I think for today, let's focus on the sort of private equity small business angle that we've been working on. Okay, so maybe a little bit on what we've learned in the market, and we've worked a lot with family businesses and small business owners in Singapore, also a little bit in Europe, and we've sort of formulated this mission of like, how can we help these owners of these SMEs to sort of preserve their legacy? They've built up a successful business over the years, and now they want to maybe retire, or they want to move on at some point. And we have sort of set, as I said, our mission, our goal is to sort of how can we help them preserve their legacy, and we do that within roughly sort of 3 big steps that I'm going to talk about today. The first is we make retirement possible for them. So we basically approach these owners. We work with them We help them to prepare sort of an exit package for them, and then we acquire the business, right? So that's really the major step for them. So we come in, we acquire the business, and then we help them slowly to exit. They could stay on, or there's different options possible, but we tend to come in and take the majority of these businesses. And then what we do, we bring in a new operator or a new owner operator, depends on the situation, right? Typically, there's nobody in their family available who can do it or who wants to do it. And we have a big network of people, professionals from all kinds of angles in the world and different industries who are interested in maybe, running a business, maybe acquiring a business without having to start up the whole business. So this is a very important step in the way where we bring in that critical person. And this happens after we've acquired the business. So we already have the business. Now it's time for this professional to come in. And then what happens afterwards? Well, there's different options. These businesses tend to be quite profitable. So the exit strategies, if there is an exit, can be, they vary. Sometimes you want to hold the business for dividend's sake, and sometimes we try to find other means to exit, which we will talk about a little bit more today. So this is a very sort of brief introduction on what the business does, on what we do. Now moving forward, I will go a little bit more into depth in maybe a bit of the introduction. So I have a background as a lawyer. A long time ago, I studied law, originally in the Netherlands, from the Netherlands. Always been in business, always been in startups, running companies, and the more last 5-6 years, I've been much more active as an investor. We are licensed in Singapore, so we have a fund management license, but we mainly invest with our own family office. So, jack of all trades might be the best introduction of myself. So this is our team. Eric, you can see here. Eric is running the private equity arm of the office, and you will see him more often. 2 other people also in the team who are watching probably, but they're not in the panel. So we have quite a small team, but we're quite successful and efficient with the small team. Okay, Eric. All right. So what's the thesis? What have we been doing maybe? Okay, so what have we seen, right? And a few things I've already noticed before. So we see owners of small traditional businesses in the range of $1 to $20 million in revenue that are older. They have been founded maybe 30 years ago. That they have a motivation to sell. They want to sell the business. They want to transition the ownership because typically they want to retire. And this is a big thesis. There is hundreds, if not thousands, of businesses that sort of fit this. Why? Well, it's a point 2, right? The second and the third generation, they don't want to do it. They might have studied overseas. They're like, I don't want to run the business and do something else, right? And number 3, these businesses are typically just a little bit too small to hire professional management. And so they're stuck. The owner is, okay, what am I going to do? I have this successful business, but I want to retire. How can I achieve this? These business owners are typically not very experienced in the process of selling the business. That's point 4. But the most important is what we've come to notice is most of these businesses are quite profitable. We've seen EBITDA percentages over 20%, and they've been doing that for 5 to 10 years. So this is quite profitable, even during COVID, most of these businesses. And so there's this huge opportunity, and we started to, at some point, like, we got to do something with this, right? Can we acquire those businesses? And we did. We acquired a few of them. But now it's time for the next step. Okay, so what have we done? Like I said, we've acquired several businesses till date, and then we have sort of applied 5 different, angles on this. Once we've acquired them, we typically look for businesses where the owner might have some strong reason to sell. It might be because there's some shareholder issues, or they really want to retire. So that's really that facilitate angle or that acquisition angle. On the second angle, we've done some restructuring. So we buy the business. Sometimes we split up some of the assets, or we try to make it a bit more tax efficient. We don't break up the business. We're not a typical private equity fund in that sense, right? We try to preserve the legacy of these businesses, so we don't go in and tear them apart. But we try to restructure them. Can we make it better? Can we make it slightly more efficient? We try to digitize them, right? We come in, some of these businesses, there's no website, there's no e-commerce strategy. There's so much to gain by just looking at these kind of angles. We've optimized, right? Give you an example. I acquired a powder coating business. We'll talk about that a bit more later. But these guys were using mainly gas, right? Because it's an oven, and they were just using this provider with this locked-in super high rate. And you can just simply achieve success by finding a cheaper provider and just increasing the whole EBITDA by making that kind of decision. And we've done some roll-up strategies, right? So we come in, and then we see that there is multiple sort of competitors in the market, and we're like, okay, maybe we can acquire those and build a bigger business. So these are the different angles we've been exploring. In the end of the day, we try to hold the business. Right, we like what it's doing. It's been profitable, and we continue from there. Thank you, Eric. All right, so a little bit about the focus segments, and then I'll talk about what is the opportunity for the people watching this webinar. We typically focus on 4 angles in the industry. We see a lot of manufacturing, and this is Singapore. I want to be clear on this. Like, we've been really focused on Singapore with this strategy. So there's a lot of manufacturing here, assembly, production. There's a lot of sort of recurring service businesses. Think about pest control, cleaning, maintenance, facility management. All have sort of like long-term contracts. They've been doing this for 20, 30 years. There's some trading businesses. We recently saw a few automotive businesses or trading automotive parts businesses that are quite ready to be digitized, and there's quite some opportunities there. And then so as you notice, like 1, 2, 3 are all sort of blue collar businesses. Number 4 is typically a bit more white collar, accountancy, business consultancy. We have done that. I have to say that I think there's more opportunity in the sort of blue collar businesses. But then again, we see white collar businesses that are interesting. It's just it's usually a little bit less profitable and sometimes a little bit less interesting. But we're open to that. Most of the success has come out of the first 3 pillars. Thanks, Eric. Okay, let's talk about the opportunity. What does this now really mean for people watching here? Good for you, HH. You bought these businesses, fantastic. But what does it mean? What does it mean for me? Okay, let's do 3 things here, right? Let's zoom in a little bit on Singapore. Why is Singapore good? Why is Singapore actually interesting for this? Such a small market. And then let's talk about what that connection could mean for you or for you watching here, right? So Singapore is small, we know that, but actually this SME space is quite interesting. The export is quite significant in Singapore, especially when it comes to manufacturing and even some trading. The problem of finding a successor here is maybe a little bit bigger than in other markets, given the sort of advanced society. Maybe second generation might not want to jump into a blue collar business. They might have opportunity in financial industry. So there's that. Because of that, there is actually an abundance of owners willing to sell at reasonable valuations, and this is important, right? That's what we all want. Like it's great that they want to sell, but can we get it at a good price? And we've actually identified that this is very much so the case. The ease of business knowledge is the business knowledge transfer is quite easy, right? There's multiple languages in the country: English, Chinese, Malay, Indian languages. And so it's quite easy to communicate with all stakeholders, and so the transition is quite smooth if you're a bit internationally minded. And there's a great funding climate because despite all this, like you literally have on one hand a lot of funds sitting in this country which try to find a route somewhere, and on the other hand you have all these businesses who are actually quite profitable. So if you have big plans, you could actually try to make that link, something those traditional owners might not have done yet. So that's about Singapore. Let's talk about the owner operator or the operator that might want to come in on this and they likes this. So what's the benefit really here? Well, first of all, you can be your own boss, right? You manage your own schedule. You work with the clients. You inspire your team. It's your own. You can acquire it as your own sort of baby, right? Build your own organization. You come in this business, you see these processes, and you're like, I can fix that. I can do that much better, right? So you get sort of like that whole opportunity in front of you to build that. Get to work in Singapore. Some of you might already work in Singapore or even born here, but it's a great opportunity to actually work here. Magnify ambition. That's an important thing, right? So you come in, you can actually, you can go the sky's the limit here. Like you could literally keep it small. You could say, well, I'm just going to acquire other business and sort of like grow this further. And also, economically, financially, you'd be better off, right? A lot of you I know have ideas on strategies and how you can, implement those strategies in those businesses. Feel free to do that, right? It's available, and you can do M&A, right? Again, a lot of people might be interested in just applying M&A strategies. We've acquired, we're in the process of acquiring this photocopy shop business, and it's just suitable for a roll-up strategy, right? So there's this one shop, some revenue. We've identified another 5 to 10 shops across Singapore, actually, and this is perfect to roll up, right, and build a bigger organization. So really, the sky is the limit. You can really sort of like jump in and make it your own and grow it from there. How do we do that then? Okay, so we're a little bit different from, I guess some of you might be familiar with search funds. We don't quite operate like that. What we do is basically, we've already acquired the business. So we have in our portfolio, and we tend to control the majority of these businesses. So that gives a sort of a warm bath approach for the person who is looking at acquiring a business, because you don't have to go look for it. You don't have to go out there and source it. You don't have to go out there and negotiate with the owner and then structure the business and then seek all the finance. Some of you might find that very interesting. There's no objection on that. But there's other people who might want to just be able to acquire it and then grow it. So that's sort of the value proposition that we put out there. We call that this warm bath setup, right? You're just ready to go in. And then there are some really strong benefits, right? Because you get these profitable businesses. They are at reasonable valuations. They have been legally and financially structured. There's free cash flow. So typically there's possibilities for sort of like debt servicing to bring in a bit more cash in the business and try to grow it. There's an opportunity for somebody to come in to acquire the business over time. And we can talk about that in detail, how exactly we do that. But just want to put it out there that we sort of, give that option. Right. And then, like I said, there is these growth strategies that you can apply to most of these businesses, actually. None of them are at their peak. All of them can sort of, with the right energy and the right ambition, can grow. So yeah, that's the warm bath that we try to lay out here. And I've rushed through things a little bit. Again, as I said, please use the Q&A, right? We have a Q&A here. We see it. Please drop, your questions or wait until the end of the webinar. That's also fine. But we're also trying to learn from you and, see what's important to you. Now, the next step is that Eric will share a little bit on the process. So should you be interested in this, or you just want to learn more, how does it work? Eric, can you explain that a little bit? What's the process here? What should people expect?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, all good, thank you.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I will be walking you through the process. We've done this a couple times, and yeah, there you go. So not every business is the same. Not everybody is the same. We're taking on different projects. So everybody has a different timeline, but this is ballpark. What is usually like. So we'll talk about the first 6 months, which is the most exciting time. So after our match and deal phase, we'll basically have a information dump on you. So this is where we dump all the financial data, all the employee data, all the products specs, everything on you. And within a few weeks, you're gonna have to really learn about the business you're gonna acquire. And this also gives you some time to think about what are your strengths and weaknesses, right? I mean, do you need more knowledge transfer before you go in? Where do you get help at? So this is where you see kind of self-evaluate yourself a little bit, where you're at, how best you understand the business. And then at day one, this is where you will be setting expectations with the team and maybe the original owner who will be hand-holding you a little bit. And this is also a time to start feeling out, who will be your best friends, walking you through, some of the most exciting times. And then you have to plan the change communication, because in a few weeks, you're going to have to communicate that you're here. And this is a monumental moment for the company. This could mean a big turning point. And then 30 to 60 days, these are the phases that are just so exciting. Why do I say that? Because you can kind of still ask those stupid questions and people won't really criticize you because you're the new guy. And we would recommend at this phase that you think about some of the problems that the company still has at this point. If the owner had 20 years to solve the problems, how come he didn't? And why would you, the new owner operator coming in, why would you be able to solve the problem, right? So this is a good exercise to do. So in the long term, and in the short term, you don't implement drastic changes and then just kill the whole company. So think about that. And then this is also a good timing to plan an early win. So that's why you want to keep a momentum going. You want to have that. You want to get to that small celebration, team celebration, as soon as possible, just to keep the team energy going. This is also where you formulate some vision, right? You're starting to see, the business and the people and then the customers and, and you're dealing with your team. At the 90 days mark, this is where you lay out a plan to execute your vision, right? You want to do something, and then let's see what the plan is. Do you have the people doing that? And then most importantly, there's probably going to be other stakeholders in the company, right? So you have to make sure that you get buy-in from these guys, besides us. We're always supporting. And then lastly, at the 6-month mark, typically this is where you do a 360-degree check. How is everybody doing? I mean, especially your direct reports. These guys are the first guys you talk to. You put them to some test probably. You're a new guy. Do they do that well? Do they need training doing that? Or did you have the wrong vision? At the 6-month mark, you have to think about your vision and whether it's going the right or wrong direction. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what you go through in 6 months, and then these processes kind of reoccur later on in the month. This is just at the beginning of 6 months. Yeah. Okay, and then the next one is later on in the process.
We'll jump all the way to the end now.
So
there's a long period in between, right? So you have to acquire these businesses for the long term, right? This is not a quick flip. So I think just good to clarify here, Eric, just give an introduction of the first 6 months. This is what happens at the beginning, and then we jump all the way to the end. Like what are the options? And then it's good because I see some questions coming in, Eric, on the exit, and maybe it's good for you to go a bit in detail here. Thanks for that. Yeah.
You guys see this? Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, I have this. We have 3 questions already. Okay. Cool. So for the exit options, again, well, I have to go back to what Martin said, that flexibility is key. We have people that generally we have people that want to stay on and acquire the business from us in the years to come, and then become the majority shareholder. There's also guys that that have done it for a while and they decided to hand it to someone else. Maybe he doesn't stay on to be the GM. Maybe he does something else in the company. And then there's also a liquidation option, right? So I mean, they're businesses that it's just meant to be taken over for 5 to 7 years, and then at the end you kind of have to liquidate it. And we actually have a structured compliant process for that. And Martin's done that for a few times since he's a trained lawyer. And yeah, I mean, it could be a couple of these options together too.
Yeah. So liquidation doesn't mean that it's going bankrupt, though, just to be clear on that. Like, it means that, the business has reached its end. It's actually been quite profitable onto the last day, but it's a good time to, wind it down at that point. It's not really in line with the preserving legacy strategy. I do acknowledge that, but it is something that we should be open to at some point.
Okay, so
thanks, Eric.
we've answered question for the first. We've answered the first question pretty much. So I just want to make sure we touch on that.
Yeah, I think I'll go a bit more in detail, but I think there's some questions I think let's push them a little bit to the end and try to complete our agenda first.
Okay, cool. All right, so we've talked about what we've done and things on a high level, and let's talk about details. And Martin actually facilitated a lot of these executions. So let's talk about case study. So, Martin.
All right. So as I said before, we like blue collar. We've seen a lot of success with that. It might have something to do with the fact that there's no second generation, or there is a second generation, but they don't want to do it. They might find that business not so shiny, and they might not see the opportunity in that. Might have heard their whole life their dad talking about it, or their mom, and they're just I don't want to do that. But if you look at the reality of these businesses, is that they are actually very interesting. And I will, out of these four, I will go into one of them to share some practical insights and what I've learned there. But yeah, here there's 4 businesses here that we actively worked on, and let's zoom on in on the first one, which is a powder coating business. All right, so for those of you that know or do not know what powder coating means, it's effectively the process where you instead of painting with the traditional chemicals, you basically spray a powder on metal and then you put it in an oven. And during the process of this in the oven, basically it hardens, and then you get the same effect as if you would use chemicals without sort of all the waste and environmental problems. This business has been around for about 20 years, actually Singapore based, quite successful, meaning that they have been profitable ever since. And they have a range of very steady customers who sort of like give them work every year, and actually not so price sensitive. So this business has quite a bit of pricing power, especially during the last year where demand was sort of like spiking. We kept on sort of increasing the rates, and it didn't affect the demand at all. That's actually a good sign, right? That means that it's actually very competitive. It's a very that business is in a good place. There is some manual work involved here, and so you're dealing with blue collar workers. So you have to have that sort of communication skill and be able to make sure that things keep on rolling, people show up for work. Some people see that as a drag, others see that as extremely exciting, to keep these people motivated. But what was the reason we actually got in? Like, why did the owner even want to sell this thing, right? Given that it was so profitable and it just was running for so long. Actually, there was a shareholder conflict in this particular business. So we are talking about a distressed owner, not so much a distressed business. We never look for distressed businesses. We always look at, what's the motivation to sell. And there was some shareholder conflict, and within the family there was no succession. So what do we do here, right? So we didn't go in straight away from day one, like we're going to acquire this business, right? And that's the difficulty in this whole process, right? And that's why the warm bath is so interesting. Warm bath meaning it's already structured. We already sourced it. We already, went through that process. Because this 2 years ago, I tell you, this owner never would want to sell, right? You would go to him, you offer him a good price, he would just want to keep it, right? But we helped him with his legal issues. We helped him with the whole process and his shareholders, right? So we built up that trust over the years with the owner, and at some point it was a sort of natural reason to say, hey, like why don't I acquire it from you? Like he wanted to retire. I told him like, okay, well, what we can do is we acquire the business. You can stay here until your retirement. You hold maybe 10% of the business. We took a 90% interest. He kept on working there because it was still it was his hobby. He liked that kind of business. He just loved to go there every day. And he just worked until he's retired. He's actually still working there today. But he's not interested in running it anymore. He doesn't want to be involved too much in the management. He doesn't want to be, thinking about how to grow the business. And so what we did is we bring in an owner operator, right? Somebody who says, and just be clear, we don't expect anyone to go in and do the work, like, be on that floor and, start doing powder coating. These businesses are still ready to be managed, right? You can come in, you can manage the process. You can optimize the supply chain. You can think about how to get bigger customers. You could think about some roll-up strategies. So there is that, spreadsheet type of angle where you can just actually, play around with the numbers and grow the business. And for this particular business, we actually gave the new owner operator basically an option to acquire the business from us over time. So he starts from day one. We have an agreement on, what the plan is and how he wants to acquire the business from us. He's not necessarily using his own money for that. Might be some debt, might be some, agreement on value add. But there is that, acquisition plan. So within 3-4 years, the owner operator would actually own this business. And at that point, our shareholders' position will actually drastically have been returned, reduced. And then or this owner operator would fully own this business. Again, the original owner is still there. So you need him. You don't want him to run off. You need him to be there. You need him to transfer knowledge. They've been doing it for 20-30 years. Don't think you can go in there and change things and do better than the owner operator or the original owner simply because he's been doing it for so long. It's just he might have made mistakes, but they typically know very, very well what they've been doing. So we need these people still to be there, and we need to work with them. But if you have that sort of mix with the original owner, with us, and then a new owner operator with a lot of energy coming in, you can actually be quite successful.
Hey, Mark, I know that you designed a legal process for them because this owner, the old guy, he just didn't know the process, right?
I mean, what it meant by process is that they never cared too much about their finances and how they how they sort of like structured the ownership of the business. Right, it was just a family business with 2 brothers, and they were just running it. Like these guys were just working, right, making money. The thing is that one of the owners started to get a little bit more money out of the business than he should, and so that there was this conflict. So and there was really a conflict because in the end of the day there were they were owning the shares, but there was no agreement, right? There was nothing in place. So I had to go through the process of buying out one of the shareholders and then work with the remaining shareholder and make sure everything became calm, and then we could go back on sort of focus on the business.
Okay, yeah, I remember it took a bit. Yeah, okay.
It takes some time. Usually it does. Yeah, usually this does not happen overnight. Like it's a bit of a patient process, but this is also the advantage for people that talk to us right now, because at the point that people talk to us, we already went through that.
Great. Okay, moving on.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Yeah.
Okay, so we are we know there are some questions. I mean, a lot of questions that are gonna be fired at us. So we kind of created this FAQ to address some of the questions. So
Yeah, the more the common questions that we've been getting. Yeah.
yeah. So the first question is that how is this different from the search funds? I mean, I got so many people in the emails. They're changing our initiative to search fund, and
Okay.
there's no need to saying this, but we're not
Right.
doing search fund stuff.
Yeah. So I think a couple of important differences, right? So first of all, we don't run a fund, right? This is important. So we've been using our own money to acquire these businesses. So we don't have any LP. We don't have, we don't charge carry to anyone. So we will literally go on the market and say, okay, what do we like, right? So there is the search approach. We do search for the business. We go through that process, but typically we don't involve anyone in that yet. We acquire the business and then we present it to, whoever is interested to work with us really and to work with that business. But we, I'd say we're completely different from search funds, right? You cannot compare us at all to a search funds in that sense.
Okay. And also, you don't have to go hunt for your targets.
Yeah, I mean that's the beauty, right? I mean, for people that work with us, they are not required to go and source the business and negotiate with the owner and then try to structure it legally and go through all that. Like we've done all that, and typically the average search funds would do that, right? That's their work. We've done that already, ready for somebody to come in and start working on the business rather than on acquiring or sourcing it.
Yes. It's been fun talking to the uncles.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Eric.
Next one. Oh, this is a good one. How is my acquisition going to be structured?
Right. So typically, what we do is we make an agreement with the. Let's just be clear here. Not everyone wants to acquire the business, right? There is people out there who say, I just want to, or I might want to just have a minority, but I'm just very interested in building this thing and working there, right? And I have a passion for that. So that's a fairly easy one to structure. Obviously, there's a lot of people who want to acquire the business, who want to get full ownership. So typically what we do is we agree upon the price in advance, right? So we say, okay, on day one, what's the price of the business? And you get an option to buy the business at that price. So any value you create during the process, that's literally money in your pocket, right? You wouldn't pay for that. So there's a day one price that we agree with each other. So that's the pricing part of it. So in advance. The second part is like, okay, how do I actually finance it then? How do I get it? There's two options, right? Typically, these businesses have quite a bit of cash. So we can use that cash to facilitate a sort of a debt structure where somebody who comes in and say, okay, I'll just borrow some money from the business, I acquire it and then offset it with the future dividends. And that's a very obvious structure. We see this all the time. Of course, there's some interest, and we have to structure that, but it's possible, especially because the cash is typically there. Secondly, there's an option to sort of offset it with salaries. You offset, you get a certain salary paid, and you offset part of that in order to acquire shares. But the beauty about this is that it doesn't matter how long it takes, in the sense that if it takes you 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, because in essence the price is still the same. So the price wouldn't go up if it takes longer, and that's really where this beauty is. The only thing is we negotiate that all the way in advance. Now,
Yeah,
I understand that there might be a lot of questions on this. Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Oh, I got a question like that before. Is it, and am I gonna keep working and then the business is just gonna be impossible for me to buy? The valuation goes crazy now. We have a fixed valuation. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's important, right? So the price is set in advance. So you're not gonna just, keep on paying a higher price. Just want to be clear that if people have their own way of financing it, we're also open to that, right? If people have other means, or they do have a search fund and they want to come in with that, and we're also quite open to that. But it will be kind of the same arrangement, where we negotiate in advance. I think flexibility is the key here. And there's no one answer to how to do this. Again, as Eric said before, every business is very, very different, not difficult. Every business is different, and there is different ways of solving the problem and working with people. But ultimately, we don't expect anyone to come on with a bag of cash and try to acquire this business, right? We would shoot ourselves in the foot if we would ask that from anybody here. So there has to be a workable solution, and the examples I gave are typically quite workable for most people. And these are, again, right, as I shared the revenue range before, these are not $100 million businesses, right? We're still talking small businesses at reasonable profit, meaning that there's reasonable valuation.
Okay. Cool. So we'll go to the next one.
All
What
right.
is the
Yeah.
size of the companies you're acquiring, and why?
Right. I didn't mention that before, but it's a good question. So we typically look at businesses in a revenue range of a few million up to 15 million. Right. So if you take a $10 million business, having an EBITDA of say 20%, we're looking at $2 million EBITDA. You might ask why, right? Why are we looking at those ranges? Well, that's actually pretty straightforward. If it's any smaller than a few $1 million in revenue, the business is too small, right? It's more like a contractor freelance type of business. If the owner is then disappearing, the whole business might collapse. So if it's too small, it's typically a little bit difficult to grow. If it's too big, meaning it goes up $15-20 million in revenue, what you see is that the owner has other options. Right? He doesn't need to work with us with this kind of structure. He would maybe talk to a PE fund, or he might think about having a more professional management in place, given that they have a bit more resources in the business. So the sweet spot is sort of in between there, and that's where the owners face the biggest problem, and that's what we can solve by building this structure.
Cool. I see more questions coming. Okay, next one.
There's a lot. Let's try to get there soon. Yeah.
All right. Is making big changes to the company not recommended? This is also a very frequent question.
Yeah. I mean, when I acquired my first business, right, I had this very big ambition because I felt that I was smart. I felt that I was like, I was going to change the world, right? I was looking at this business, I was like, this owner made so many mistakes, I can fix all of them. And then as you start to uncover this business, and you're in that first 6 months that Eric was talking about earlier, you'll learn that it's never as easy as you think, right? There's a reason things have done a certain way for so long. And for that reason, I learned that to set your ambition in line with what's possible, right? What can be achieved, and what's the timeline you need. There's people working there. These people might have been working there for 15 years. You coming in, telling them that everything is going to be different might not land so well. Right? There's customer relationships that have been around for so long, distributors, suppliers that have been working with you. So you can go in and rip it apart and change everything. So my recommendation is not to. My recommendation is to take a more patient approach. You're not buying a distressed business. You're not coming in on a distressed business, right? So there's no immediate need to go around and change things, right? It's actually, if you don't touch it, it might actually still run well. And I see that as one of the questions somebody asked, like, can I just buy this and have a hands-off approach? I'd say the answer is a little bit in the middle, though. I don't think you can be completely hands-off. I think you have to have a bit of a passion for the industry and be involved with it on a daily basis. But for example, the powder coating business, I've learned that even though that the existing owner is no longer the owner, he's still managing it. Like he's still running it, and things have been running for so long that it's like, I only step in when I either one, I want to grow it, I see an opportunity, or two, there's some kind of problem that I need to attend to. But that again depends on also your own ambition. Like how much plans do you have for that business? Like how far do you want to bring it? What do you want to do with it? But remains important. These are small businesses. There is, you're dealing with blue collar workers sometimes. You can't apply whatever you learn in the books all the time. You have to have a hands-on approach. Sometimes you might have to drink a cup of coffee with the blue collar workers and make them happy. So it's part of the job, and it's it can be quite interesting. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, and then these businesses, unlike startups, right? These businesses are already profitable, so you are able to make some changes.
Well, it's your business.
Yeah, it's your business.
I mean, you can do what you want, right? I mean, but we want to, I'm just giving advice, right? I mean, but what I've learned is, to be careful there. But yeah, I mean, you can do what you want, and there is cash to do it, right? So these businesses are typically, they have money in the bank, so you got some room to wiggle and to play around.
Okay. Next is the Q&A.
All right.
Shall we go over the 10 questions we have first, or?
I think there's more than that though, but okay, let's see if I can answer some of them. I found a few of them quite interesting. Oh yeah. Do you facilitate work permits for someone outside of Singapore? We don't as a family office, but these businesses typically are able to do that. So they can apply for an EP typically, and I think one of the advantages is that you can actually get work permits through these businesses. Not 100% rule, but usually that this is possible. What are your requirements for HH exit or staying as a shareholder? What are your expectations to the candidates? I find that a very good question, actually. I don't need to have a very fixed rule on whether we want to stay in the business or we go exit completely. We are very flexible on working with you on what works for everyone. I mean, we could hold a majority if you want. We can also hold a minority and be in the business and maybe help you and keep on supporting the business, or we can completely exit. I don't have a very strict rule on this. We want to give people flexibility on that. To your second question, what are the expectations of the candidate? This is actually one of the most important questions, right? So what is a good match? How can we, what does the business need? What does the candidate want? What does somebody want from the business? And so there's a bit of matchmaking there, and it's quite difficult for us to give a straightforward answer on that. Maybe Eric, you can share a little bit on your process, let's if people actually after this webinar say, look, I want this, like I'm super keen, like what should I do?
Okay, well, so this is actually what we're gonna do later. It'll be kind of a more or less like a selection interview process. We'll actually try to get your get you to send your CV and everything we need, and then we'll make a database, and then we'll actually schedule a one-on-one call with you one by one after this. So and we'll explain the process further. Yeah. And it also depends on our deal flow right now. So.
Yep. Okay. Hope that clarifies. So this is a good question, right? Somebody asks, like, how do you earn from this? Like, what's in it for HH, right? And I think that's a fair question, right? Like, how do we earn here? So we earn in the process of searching for the business, acquiring the business, and structuring the business. So that's where we create value for people. That's where we create value for people to join. When there is a warm bath set up for somebody to join in, we've already made our value. We might not have made money yet, but the difference in that's where the value is created, basically. So, and we will only earn for the future if we stay in the business as a minority shareholder and the business does very well. But technically, the value that we want to create for people is the value of acquiring the business, creating the warm bath. I know that's might not make a super detailed answer, and I'm happy to take that further in another conversation on how exactly we do that. But yeah, we're transparent on that. That's where the value is. How do you source businesses? That is actually our work. That's what we do that's what our team focuses on, right? A lot of that is about building trust, right? To build up a name in the market, to make sure that people hear about you. The owner of the powder coating business I talked about earlier, he's very happy with us. Like, we actually helped him on so many levels that he's just raving about us in the market, and now other owners start to talk to us about the same process. We talk sometimes to brokers, not much though. We don't work with brokers too much. It's mainly direct sourcing and building up a name for yourself. So it's a long process.
Yeah, the guy brought a pest control guy.
Yeah. How many opportunities businesses do you have in HH portfolio that is looking for an HOO to take over right now? We have I'd say a handful, maybe 4 or 5 different businesses where we are like, okay, this one is good for owner operator to come in. And there's a lot of deals in the pipeline that are not ready yet. They're not ready for somebody to jump in. We still have a lot of work to do, but we don't mind to already start matchmaking. Right, we know that we're going to acquire this business probably if everything works out, and we would love to speak to people here and that already say, I love that business, I would like to do that, and we can involve you in the conversation. That's totally fine. Do you charge monitoring fees or transaction fees at acquisition? We do not. We do not charge any fees. We just want to sell the business to you, partly or wholly, whatever you want. But we've already created value by structuring the deal. Oh, Eric, I'm just rushing to the questions a little bit. Who provides the capital and how much equity is given to the operator? I think we've answered that question. If not, please reach out to us later, and we'll be happy to go more in detail if it wasn't really clear.
Okay.
I think these are most of the questions, Eric.
Yeah.
I think that's all we have today.
People want to get to know us a little bit more, but we can talk, offline.
Oh, Eric, this is another interesting question here. We might want to take this one. For the matchmaking and interview selection, and I think you can take this question. For the matchmaking and interview selection, is it quintessential for the owner operator to have experience in the industry?
Okay, the answer is it's essential, but it's maybe not quintessential. I think.
Can you give some example? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so if you let's say we're going into a refrigeration truck business, right? Where we're selling that to you, and you have you worked on some cases at McKinsey on this, and you also had an engineering background, and it would help. It would definitely, add a lot of points. It won't be the final decision, but if you work,
it would help, right?
If you worked on it during your projects, during consulting, it's good. If you had a degree on it, great. And there was also people before that just have genuine interest in this, and that they've actually become a pretty good owner operator, not the best.
Yeah,
pretty good, pretty good owner operators too. So
it's interesting, right? Because I speak to the original owners sometimes about this, right? And if you ask them, most of these guys, they will tell you it's about passion. right? It's about you
Interest.
having a interest and a certain passion for this business and for this industry and for growing this thing and putting your energy in that. And I think like Eric said, it's a plus if you've worked in the industry before. It will help you. It will help you to pick it up faster. But I've done many businesses in my life or many challenges in my life where I didn't have any experience before, and you jump on it, you grab it with both hands, and you work on it, and you put your energy in it, and you'll see that you can be successful in that as well. So it's a balanced answer.
Yeah, we had an OO that helped our auto part business to go online. Actually, I mean, that was a different skill set, and it definitely helped our traditional business.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, Eric, a few more minutes. There's still some more questions coming in.
Whoa. Okay.
I think we'll try to wrap it up before 9, guys, at 9 p.m. Singapore time. So that's another 3-4 minutes. To what extent will HH be involved in management decisions of the company, assuming it remains the majority shareholder? You know what the answer is? We have a fairly broad portfolio of different businesses and different companies, that even if we hold the majority in the business, I prefer not to. I prefer not to be sitting on the chair to make all the decisions. My ideal scenario in any business, regardless we hold majority or minority, is to have strong leadership who is running the business and is capable of doing that by themselves without me or us breathing in their neck. So that's my philosophy, and usually that works, barring some exceptions where there's really a need to step in because things really just don't work out well. But that's our ideal philosophy. Come in, you do it. You have the passion, you have the energy, you want to do it. Okay, trust is there. Go ahead. Okay, I'm gonna select one more question and that's it, guys. Sorry, I need to. Okay, so this one may be on the compensation of the owner operator. That's a good question. So somebody asked, what is the compensation of the owner operator? It depends on the company is the answer, right? What's the skill of the company? How much resources are there available? If you look at some of the profits that they're generating, you could decide to get a decent market rate salary out of it, given then that you want to use probably some to acquire the business or some of the shares, or you could choose to leave some of the salary in the business so that you can actually you can grow it, you can build it out. But most of the businesses I've seen so far is you can draw a salary that can afford you a decent lifestyle in Singapore, so it can sustain. But the real profit is obviously when you build the business, when you grow it, and you profit from the profit of the business. That's ultimately where the benefit is. All right, Eric. I think that's it.
Yeah. Okay, guys. So let me wrap this up for you guys, and we have recorded this session, so we'll be sending this out. I think maybe it'll be on the YouTube link. So I'll talk to Martin about that later. And yeah, so I'll be sending out email communication to you guys about the following steps. So stay tuned for the email and the instructions in there.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. I'm ending this webinar right now.